I want to go to my guest. He is here. Let's bring him on. We are joined with the magnificent Jeff Rich. How you doing, Jeff? I'm sorry, Dr. Jeff Rich. You doing okay today?
I'm very well, Jamal. Uh, quite amused by that speech, though.
Well, I mean, just let me introduce you first.
In
I'm
a
Dr. Jeff
dark
Rich.
way.
Well, let me introduce you. Dr. Jeff Rich. He's a historian, author, retired governmental official in Melbourne, Australia, with a PhD in history and over 3 decades of experience in government. He's created the Burning Archive YouTube channel and Substack, where he shares commentaries, book reviews, interviews on world history, culture, and politics. He has written 4 books, including 13 Ways of Looking at a Bureaucrat. Jesus. 13 ways. Thank you for joining me, man. I always appreciate these conversations. I kind of wanted to, when I read that the first time around, I was like, 13 ways of looking at a bureaucrat. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
Let's go. Give me your take. You were talking about the speech. You mean Trump's speech at the United Nations?
Well, I guess that's what happens when you have a incompetent president with an incompetent staff, none of whom are prepared to say, boss, you're overdoing it, and an incompetent entire government administration who just allow complete nonsense to be fed through to your key decision maker every day. And no one at any point in the chain says, this is a really stupid idea, Donald.
Right. Maybe this is a bad idea. Nobody says that, right? But to be fair to them, they will be fired if they ever even breathe. Meaning the reason that Rubio and all of these people around Donald Trump have those jobs is because they're sycophants. Not for their intelligence. It's not like somebody said, let me hire Jeff Rich, because Jeff Rich is a doctor of history. And Jeff Rich is not going to let the president go up and say insane stuff. No, you would not get that job for the explicit reason that you are a doctor of history. And you would raise your hand and say, wait a minute, is this a good idea? Get that guy out of here. Get that guy out of here. Who's that guy? Why is he here? No, that speech was amazing.
The other scary thing about it is a lot of what he said in other places, and other US government officials of both administrations, more or less, and large numbers of Americans across the political spectrum say in more or less extreme, terms. I mean, it's only Donald Trump who would complain about the elevator and complain about, how he could have built the building better, and and even got the incident at the elevator wrong, because I just saw it once, but it looked to me like it stopped, paused for a second. Melania Trump was totally unfazed, and she just kept walking up the elevator, and then Donald Trump followed her lead. But of course, So I think maybe Melania Trump is the only competent person in the White House, maybe. But but yeah, it's just so full of nonsense, and it's a real problem because, as you say, that is the symbol of the United States to the world.
It's humiliating. Now. It's just deeply humiliating.
And the world's got to think sort of seriously about it, because there's an element of it which is, darkly humorous. It's just watching someone sort of implode on a public stage and not realizing the fact that, he's no longer in a protected bubble of, sycophantic advisors and sycophantic journalists and all the rest of it. He's actually, at the leading international forum in the world every year, the sort of podium of the General Assembly, and he's just going on like this, He's saying, what's the point of the United Nations? Oh, well, check your briefing book, Donald.
Just to show what you were referencing, right? The speech where he goes into this thing of like, yeah, I would have rebuilt the UN. This building sucks. Teleprompter sucks. All of it sucks. I mean, and the audience may think we're joking. We're not joking. We're actually being pretty literal. Listen to this.
Known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product. And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad.
You know,
It's outrageous.
Jamal, I reckon the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres,
Yeah.
should, go into the archives and release Donald Trump's tender document for the reconstruction of the United Nations and show to the world what a crappy proposal it probably was. Full of, gold-plated nonsense everywhere. And
Yeah, he said, and now you have the sucky escalator that nearly killed my wife.
yeah, it's just
amazing.
It's just astonishing. But, seriously, it just displays a complete absence of any sense of international diplomacy, a complete absence of any sense of what the actual role of the United Nations really is, limited and weak and all the rest of it that it is.
Yeah.
And then you read some of the things and you say, well, the old adage that every accusation is a confession also applies, because he says, the United Nations is financing invasions.
Yes, it is. It's like these immigrants.
Here we are. The UN is not solving problems. It should too often is actually creating new problems for the world to solve. So let's just substitute US here. The US is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. The US is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them.
I think it tells us something else, though.
Let's think of
make
a few
really good point.
places.
Like, usually when a president goes, they are leaders of the free world in the way that they call it, right? Like even Joe Biden, when he was giving speeches at the UN, he tried to keep up this veil of, I may be out of my mind, my brain may be mush, but I'm the leader of the free world. Trump gets rid of all pretense. He doesn't seem to care. He has no respect for anybody that's there. He doesn't have any respect for the United Nations. He just doesn't care. And that's, I think, the thing that comes home clear than anything else. I don't know if it's the hubris of a hegemon that has just gone completely mask off or what, but the king has no clothes and the king doesn't care that he's naked. It's like, why should I respect any of you?
I saw some report of one of those loopy Fox News hosts, I can't remember which one, saying, we should bomb the UN. Sort of like
Jesse Waters. Jesse Waters.
There you go. And so crazy as it is, there are people who seem to voice that, and it just reflects this incredible insularity, I guess. And seriously, I mean, I just think people around the world have to think about, okay, US, you've got absolutely no respect for the United Nations, you've got no respect for international law, you've been breaching the United Nations Charter since 1945, you haven't paid your dues sometimes, all sorts of things. And you've, over the last couple of years with the Gaza situation, you've entirely, killed your moral authority with things, and reduced to it's like less than 10 even, or 10 or so votes in the United Nations voting in support of the sort of pro-Israel sort of resolutions on various matters. So this, to me, there's sort of two rogue states at the moment in the United Nations, Israel and the USA, and I almost wonder whether it wouldn't be better for the countries of BRICS, the countries of the SCO, whatever, maybe a group of regional associations to get together and say, we could probably run the United Nations better ourselves. We're, after watching your speech, Donald, we're all leaving. You can rebuild the UN, make it your new White House if you like.
Yep.
And we're going to go and set up the United Nations elsewhere without you and without, any country clearly committed by an international court of justice of committing genocide.
Yeah.
And we'll set up a new and better United Nations Charter without all the hassle that you bring to it. And I mean, maybe that's even possible. I don't know. It's just a wild idea, but we really, everyone around the world has really got to think about the fact that the United Nations, the US president has just stood up at the UN General Assembly and put on a performance like that. And what is the consequence for that kind of action?
Consequence. Donald Trump could have sat up there, took a dump, and just left, and it would have been the exact same effect. Like, it's radical disrespect. Like, it's it's one thing to say. There's a clip that comes to mind, David Chappelle. I don't know if you've ever watched a David Chappelle show, or if you know who Rick James is, but they had this clip of Rick James, where Rick James came to, like, I think it was Eddie Murphy's house or something like that, and he wouldn't take his shoes off when he was putting his feet on the couch. And he just started stomping on the couch and just stomping on the couch. And of course, they got mad and they beat Rick James up. The point I'm making here is, it's that. It's like he just comes there, freeballs it, like just off the top of his head, stream of conscious. And it's not even, to make it even worse, he was reading the teleprompter. So it was a speech that was written. That wasn't even off the top of his head. That was something that he wrote down and said, gold. And I bet if you asked him today, that speech was fantastic. I got all sorts of compliments for my speech. It was an amazing speech. I would wager to you he would say that if you asked him.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly a lot of it was also just targeted at a domestic audience too. I've done all these things, blah, 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 rather than in any serious. I mean, a lot of the things were just local American political issues, really, inflation and other sorts of things, and even a lot of the harsh rhetoric about Europe and he's just kicking the outsiders, kicking the foreigners basically to please a domestic audience. So I mean, I can see how within a very limited sort of mindset, someone could have seen that as a purposeful, calculated, good thing to do because it will, boost Donald's image with his core voters. But the problem is that sort of mindset is just totally ill-fitted for the tasks that the United States government has, if it, wants to be in any way a responsible international citizen.
Part of me likes it, believe it or not, because part of me thinks the rest of the world needs to grow up. And that sounds very brutal. But when he's making the speech and he's targeting Germany, he's like, Germany was destroying itself, but now Germany is doing great. It's like, dude, Germany has been in a recession for years at this point, ever since the war started, more or less. They have been bleeding jobs left and right. And you're sitting up here saying, Germany has been doing great. It was doing horrible when it was doing all of that climate change stuff. And it's like, I would imagine the German is sitting there like, you blew up Nord Stream. Like, you blew up a pipeline and you're really going to come at us like this? Going after the mayor, Khan in London, saying that he's trying to implement Sharia law. I agree with you. I do think it was for a domestic audience. It's, oh, look at the president browbeat all of these countries in Europe. That's so cool. That's so awesome. And I've seen people online, they was like, this will go down as the greatest president ever after the speech. And I think I put like 1,000 LOLs as a comment. I was being an asshole on Twitter. You're right. I agree with you. This is cut for a very specific domestic audience. These are my voters. I just care about my voters. But God, man, it's so wrong. Like,
It's so
let's
wrong,
let
and
America
it's not
go.
working either for his domestic. I mean, this is what John Helm is saying, that this sort of strategy of divisiveness, let's say, is
Mhm.
not particularly working for Trump. He's tanking in the polls and not really doing very well at all, and all his excessive claims of success are just so manifestly wrong that
Yeah.
it's counterproductive. Really, it just looks like the sort of drunk, boastful guy at the cocktail party.
But do you think that that's what they want? I mean, like, there's a new professor that I came across, a Chinese professor. I can't think of the guy's name. I don't think I
Mm,
can even pronounce his name.
mm,
Some stuff he's hit and miss on, but some stuff he's very interesting and prescient on in regards to his kind of, I guess you could say, analyzing history and analyzing like reality-based history. Like, okay, I
mm,
know they say this, but what was the reality of this? And the way, how do human beings behave, and what can we look at history for it? And he points out that Donald Trump, for all intents and purposes, is a king. That
mm,
he is the king that harnesses the population against, let's say, the oligarchs, despite the fact that he is an oligarch. But he's a confidence man that can make people believe that somehow he is a blue-blooded aristocrat, in a way that various levels of the population can trust him on that front. And honestly, even to this day, when you look at people, they would say they have this kind of very weird take on him that doesn't seem associated with
mm,
reality. And yet he can get up there and make that speech. And there is no political opposition in the United States against Donald Trump on issues
mm.
of immigration, the economy, on crime, et cetera. Donald Trump and the Republicans are well ahead of Democrats by like double digits.
And this is why I think it's important not just to see it as an act of personal incompetence by Trump. It's
Yeah.
an act of institutional incompetence by the American government, by the
Yeah.
American political system as well. The fact that you know, that's what you're offering the world. You have to think pretty. When I say United
Yeah.
States citizens who are watching the show have to think pretty hard about, well, how the hell did we get into this kind of situation? You might be right that it is intentional, but it's like a lot of Trump's strategies, and I think part of the reason they sort of go all over the place and change all the time, they're sort of barely thought through sort of strategies. They're kind of, let's project this image today,
Mhm.
see how that goes down, rather than let's pursue some sort of consistent course of action that involves, overcoming resistance and buying, winning support from other people. He can't do that. He just can't do that. And I think that flows into the sort of tweet about Russia and Ukraine, because I
Mhm.
mean, you could, as I tend to agree with you, that it is a big, it's like a magic trick. Let's create a big distraction at the start about me trash talking Russia, while
Like
and
Putin sucks, Russia
make
sucks.
everyone think I'm being really tough.
Right, right.
And in the meantime, I mean, basically, I'm doing what Europe wants me to do. Basically, I
Yeah.
mean, Europe has won. I mean, the supposed vassal has got exactly what it wanted, because what the US was trying to do was ill-conceived, poorly thought through, and basically trying to withdraw unilaterally from the war that it had started, without doing anything about all its sort of military and intelligence infrastructure in Eastern Europe,
Yeah.
and pretend that all these other things that it's doing as an active participant in the war are sort of not really there. And Europe said, "There's no way you'll sort of bail on this war and leave us with the problem, Donald, and we're going to lay various snares for you that are going to make sure that your reputation will be completely ruined as, the Kabul 2.0 sort of situation."
Mhm. But Jeff,
And
oh,
yeah,
please, I'm sorry.
that's where they've got to. So he's basically said, I'm going to sort of just send you the money and let NATO do what NATO does. But NATO is the United States.
Yes,
NATO, it's
predominantly.
run by the United States, and it always has been. It's, the problem
Well,
with NATO is it doesn't defend Europe. It supports the United States' global expansion. And a lot of the people who are critical of NATO, etc., sometimes sort of forget that, sort of perceiving NATO as somehow Europe, but NATO is not Europe. NATO is the United States and the sort of United States friendly aspects of the European sort of military and political elite. So,
yeah, a power projection device of
yeah,
America. And people shouldn't forget that. I guess
yeah,
the thing is, it is a magic trick, this Truth Social, because I think the biggest items in it is, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win Ukraine back in its original form. So there's that, right? Hey, Europe, I think you guys will be fantastic at paying for Ukraine to fight this war. And then when he gets to the end, he says, I wish both countries well. We will continue to supply weapons, meaning you can continue to buy weapons from us, and you can do whatever you want with them. I'm out. I'm Trump. Good luck. That doesn't sound like, hey, we're here with you. It sounds like you guys deal with that. He's like, he's trashing Russia in the very beginning, right? Putin sucks. Lavrov sucks. Peskov sucks. Russia sucks. They need gas. They're losing people, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's, all right, well, in any event, I'm going to let you guys deal with that. You can continue to buy weapons from us. We're perfectly willing to sell you weapons. And you can do whatever you want with those weapons. I'm out. Good luck. I'm Trump.
yeah.
Meaning,
When he says I'm out, what
he
he
doesn't
means
say I'm out.
is
He says, I wish both of you well. I wish we will continue to supply weapons to NATO. NATO can do whatever they want with those weapons. Good luck to all.
yeah, and NATO, the commander of NATO is an American, so he's just sending weapons to himself, really, isn't he?
Oh, God.
He's running the weird technical stuff that I don't really understand, but
Yeah.
it's really. Oh, what I was going to say, when he says he's out, what he means is he's
Well, he didn't say he's out. To be
politically
fair,
out, so he can say it was Biden's war and now it's Europe's war, and I don't want to have any political embarrassment about it. But he's not withdrawing any significant logistical,
support, no.
military intelligence, other kinds of support at all. And like I was watching this panel of some Ukrainian historians and Neil Ferguson, the sort of Anglo-American sort of historian.
I know him. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to do a video on him one day, but I sort of, I probably need to get it, legally checked. But anyway, apart from anything else, all that they were, they're all very critical of both NATO and America sort of not fessing up with not enough aid and not supporting Ukraine enough earlier on and all that sort of stuff. But basically their pitch was, this is Europe's war, because if Ukraine goes down, according to Timothy Snyder, one of the most ardent, sort of Ukrainian historian / propagandist, journalist kind of thing, it will bring down the European Union. And he said, even potentially,
Whoa.
The United States, which is sort of fantasy land. But it is this kind of thing of saying, you can't leave us now. You can't leave us now. You're as much invested in this struggle as anyone. And I think, in a way, that's the kind of trap that Trump is, because he's not very strategic. He doesn't really know the kind of issues and games that he's sort of involved in, nor do his senior team. I mean, I think Marco Rubio probably does, but my impression of Marco Rubio is every appearance he gives, he says, the president says this, and I'm saying what the president says.
Yes.
And he's just biding his time till the whole thing sort of implodes. And at least he's articulate. And I don't think Marco Rubio would have delivered a speech like that. He's probably said with a little private smirk to himself, "Great speech, Donald. You do it."
Little Marco was not going to contradict.
Pour me a glass of champagne now.
Yeah, like this is going to be great. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, because what I get the sense is that Donald Trump wants to do everything in his power to push this off to Europe. This is yours now. You handle this. You figure this out. And if you want to go fight the Russians, God bless you. Have at it. And I think the Europeans have this idea that if they get into trouble fighting the Russians, that the U.S. will come to its rescue once again, like it did in First World War. I don't know if that's entirely true. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. And that's terrifying because that means that's a third world war by definition, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I look at it a little bit differently because, I mean, I tend to see, I mean, we talk about Europe and US as sort of separate kind of thing, but I mean, we can just think of it as the one networked empire in which there's a whole bunch of elites within Europe who are effectively loyal to one or other of the factions within the United States, really.
Yes.
And I think that is a pretty accurate description of Europe today. Like, the Polish foreign minister is married to Anne Applebaum, and is deep. And there's a whole bunch of these, both American and European officials who are sort of hanging out in Europe, officials or former officials, think tankers, all the rest of it. This sort of policy community. They're all hanging out in Europe, sort of basically waiting for Trump to go and come back and then go back to Plan B.
Well, who's next is Vance, who is not going to make their life any better.
I personally don't have a very high opinion of Vance. I know some people do, but I think he's inept. But I mean, allegedly Vance was the guy briefing Donald Trump on foreign policy for the first 6 months. So, like, Trump, wouldn't read his briefs, so he got Vance to sort of brief him on all the issues. So the product that you saw at the UN today is a result of J.D. Vance's skill as a briefer.
That's so sad. Or Donald Trump's ability to take in whatever.
Or not absorb it, yeah.
I don't think though. I think this, yes, I think part of this is I'm directing this at my base. I think the other part of it is I just don't care. Like, I think if Donald Trump is indeed taking on this aspect of a king, let's assume for the moment he looks at America as we can do anything, we're the primacy in our position of America, et cetera, et cetera. And let's say you take that to its nth degree, where you don't read the briefs, you don't know the limitations of the country, you don't get the reality of how the world is kind of put together and connected. And you may think, as I strongly believe, that we don't care about, meaning we have objectives to accomplish. It's not about, well, he doesn't understand the politics of this region. No, we don't care. We have objectives that we want to accomplish. And so when Donald Trump is making that speech, if you accept for the moment that he looks at himself as king of the world because he's king of the quote unquote indispensable nation, then he may not care what Europe thinks of him. He may not care what these other countries are looking at him and laughing behind his back. What he knows is you can laugh now, but when I come to you and ask you for something, you will bend over and you will bend the knee. That may be the way. Think about for the moment the way he treated von der Leyen. But think about the way he treated the European leaders when they came on. Like, he made fun of all of them. Like, he joked every last one of them.
But who's won now? But who's won now? Okay, so he got his moment of, narcissistic emotional satisfaction
Right.
of, setting up that ridiculous, like, the photo with the European leaders in the White House.
Yes.
I mean, to me, the real question about that is who the hell sets up a photo like that, really? I mean,
A
no one
king,
who I
the
mean,
CEO of the world.
well, a king who has a very short-term perspective on, or very limited understanding of just how much power the barons underneath the king really do have,
Yes.
and how vulnerable to various forms of removal kings really are. you
Well,
know,
he doesn't know. I mean, I don't think he
He-
believes that. Yeah? Like, I really
Well, he
don't
may
think.
not, but think about what's happened. I mean, the Europeans put up with a little bit of ritual humiliation, but they've got what they wanted. The US is still involved in the war, and Europe is probably in the diplomatic driving seat now, I suspect.
Oh, I don't think so. I so disagree with that. Like, I so disagree with that. We'll see. I just,
We'll see.
to
We'll
me,
see.
I'm taking something different from that
Yeah,
tweet than I think a
yeah,
lot of people are. A lot of people are looking at it as Trump did a 180. But at no
yeah.
point did Trump say, even when he was talking to Zelensky, that we'll get involved. And
Mhm.
even at the UN speech, Donald Trump was like, I'm ready to pass bone crushing sanctions on Russia,
Yeah.
providing Europe does something that I know as a flat fact that Europe is never going to do, especially Hungary or Slovakia. They're never going to give up gas like that. And the other European countries are not going to give up buying gas, whether it's through a third party or otherwise. So it's like, okay, you're making the strong statement about what you're willing to do, providing something that Europe is not going to do. Okay, so that's a no, that's a nothing. And then you put out a tweet effectively saying, hey, we'll continue to sell you weapons, but
Mm.
you all have a good day. Or, you basically,
Yeah.
both of you have a wonderful life.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
He's passing it. It's almost like this thing is going to collapse. I
Yeah.
want Europe to be holding the bag when it does, which is dangerous.
Mm.
Like, it is immensely dangerous. I mean, look at what
Mm.
Europe is doing right now. Europe is doing its please daddy don't leave moment, where it's, oh, they were flying Russian jets through Estonian airspace. Okay, it wasn't Estonian airspace, but they're going to call it that. They dropped a bomb on a house. Okay, there was a Polish bomb that fell on a house as it was trying to take down a drone with nothing in it, meaning it was a paper drone. It was a decoy drone. And the other drones look like they just were planted. And so it's kind of like, okay, you guys are trying to do a false flag. Why are you doing this? And are you trying to? I think my biggest fear is that they're trying to create a false flag to create a pretext to come into Ukraine before Ukraine collapses. Like, meaning you
Mm.
don't want Ukrainian military to collapse if indeed you're going to get involved, because from the perspective of Europe, this is a utter disaster if Ukraine collapses.
Mm.
Now, the key part is Trump. Does Europe fully believe? And let me get your take on that. Do you think that Europe believes that Donald Trump would come to their rescue? Because that's what I think their behavior is based on. Trump will give us a backstop. We don't believe that he's not going to get involved.
I think this. I think part of the issue is that Trump is so fluctuating and varying, and there's obviously competing factions within the American government that are arguing different points of view.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of pressure, as you say, from Europe and Ukraine for the US to be the backstop, because it's basically the biggest army, really, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of sort of makes sense, really, doesn't it? And after all, it started the war. So there's a bit of a moral case there as well. And I suspect that that case will win out ultimately at the end. I mean, I heard John Helmer say that the thing about that is constantly being now revealed about Trump, and all the flip flopping, etc.,
Mhm.
is the fact that he puts his imprimatur with his unique marketing style on decisions that are basically made, that are presented to him as being made by him, but are really made by
Somebody else.
the court, if you like, and the
Yeah.
consensus behind the scenes and the power struggles, and it probably reflects compromises. And because there's no competent policy coordination process, and I heard Lawrence Wilkerson talk about this on another show a couple of days ago, so you should ask him about it. The there's no policy coordination process, and for America that means both not only internally but within its broad alliance system. So it's not able to actually, properly control the actions of Britain and
Interesting.
the Eastern
Interesting.
European states and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's partly why we're seeing these actions, which you could say they are kind of military type actions that are pursuing a political objective of those states, which is to keep the United States in the war.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. They're wildly dangerous and
Oh, so
that
dangerous.
sort of stuff. But you can see when the coordination decision making process is really broken down. You're going to have crazy schemes endorsed, and surely that and sort of people sort of going perhaps a little bit beyond their real mandate in terms of authorising actions and that sort
Yeah.
of thing as well.
Yeah.
So,
Like they're talking about shooting down Russian planes, and it's like, okay, dude, you are
Oh
lost.
yeah,
You
but
have
see, I
lost
think
the plot. Big time.
I think Rubio has said point blank that that's not going to happen. So, but I guess the thing is,
Okay.
and this is the thing. I mean, this is the thing when the rest of the world is watching this, we're saying, "Oh my God, this country has military bases in whatever it is, 80 countries around the world. In Australia, they've got some big, surveillance thing that watches on half the world, and this bunch of clowns is running the show.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is. It's just
Yes.
so scary and dangerous, and
Yeah. It's terrifying. This is not John F.
and
Kennedy and Khrushchev.
it freaks people out. It really freaks people out. And
Yeah.
I mean the Polish, thing. It was also coinciding with the Soviet Union entering Poland in 1939, roughly the same time. So I wonder if there was, some sort of propagandary sort of value to it all as well. But my son was coincidentally in Poland at that time, and my partner was really really worried about. I mean, is there going to be a shooting war where our son is? So it's just so reckless and dangerous, and it's having an impact all across the world. So
The Polish hate the Russians.
yeah.
I was there. Oh God, what 5, 6 years ago, I think, give or take. And for whatever reason, it never occurred to me that they hated the Russians. And I remember having this conversation with the doctor, and he was very polite about it, but very insistent about it. And his thing was like, we don't believe that anybody would come to help us. They didn't come to help us the first time around, and like this complete disbelief that NATO would come to the aid of Poland. And of course, they have the museum where one side of it is, of course, the Nazis and what the Nazis did, and then the other side is this kind of red room where the entire room is bathed in red, the entire like floor, ceiling, and everything else, and it's Soviet atrocities in it. They remember that stuff like it was yesterday. So yeah, it's terrifying. What time is it, Jeff? We have. Damn it! I wanted to get to. Okay, we're gonna have to get to this on another day. I am curious on your take, though. You pointed out there's not enough time to flesh this out. The Soviets basically looking. I cannot think of the guy's name. His book, I think it starts with a K, where he was talking about Stalin looking
Stephen
across.
Kotkin, maybe.
That's it. Yes, where he was talking about like he did a trilogy of 3 books on Stalin, and in one of those books he was talking about how Stalin was watching Hitler build this war machine, and what he's going to use a war machine for, considering that when he's talking about Jews, he's talking about Soviets, Russians, etc. Like Hitler didn't necessarily make a distinction between those things. What was their foreign policy? We have a few minutes, if we have enough time to hit it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Look, I've been doing these interviews with a professor from Canada, Professor Michael Jabbar Akali, who's written a series of books called Stalin's Gamble, which is about 1930, 1936, Stalin's Failed Alliance, 1936 to 39, and Stalin's Great Game, which is the last 2 years up to Operation Barbarossa. And, the established idea within Western commentary is that, there was this sort of dirty trick played by the Soviets in, agreeing to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact just before the start of World War II in 1939. And that, it was a betrayal, and it revealed the fact that, basically the two totalitarians of Europe, Stalin and Hitler, were, kind of best buddies and all that sort of thing. But he's been through all the Soviet archives and also the British, French and other archives. And he basically says the Soviet policy from the emergence of Hitler in 1933 was to form an anti-Nazi alliance with the Western powers to defeat or contain Germany. And there were repeated efforts or rebuffs by those Western powers of this attempt to form an alliance.
Yes.
And in that story, Poland was not a blameless victim. Poland, was definitely... Poland had fought wars with the Soviet Union in sort of 1920.
Mm-hmm.
And it had invaded all the way to Kiev, and then the Russians or the Soviets pushed them back all the way to Warsaw, and then they sort of met in the middle somewhere. And then...
just to be clear, this is Prussia, correct?
Sorry?
Was this Prussia or was this Poland at the time?
No, this was in 1920. So this was the new Polish state in the Soviet Union, and the new Polish state saw itself as a bit of a bulwark against communism, and it was all tied up with the Civil War and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And Poland itself had been partitioned in the late 18th century, like from 1770 to 1790, between Prussia, Russia, and Austria. Later Austria-Hungary. So those three empires basically eliminated the Polish state over the course of about 20 years and divided it up between them. And that's partly why, the Galician part of Ukraine is, heavily influenced by Austrian sort of culture, all those sort of different issues.
Interesting.
But basically the Brits and the French and the Poles, and some of the other powers as well, basically rebuffed the attempts by the Soviet Union to form a defensive alliance against Germany. And, it even got to the point that in April 1939, which is after the Czechoslovak crisis, after Munich 1938, and Neville Chamberlain saying, "Peace in our time." And Munich 1938, the infamous event about appeasement. The Soviet Union was specifically excluded by Britain, France. Mussolini amazing. Was there, Hitler was there, Chamberlain, and the French Prime Minister, from memory, was Daladier. They were all there, but it was not the Soviet Union. And at the same time, the Soviet Union was going through internal turmoil, purges. When I say internal turmoil, deadly
Stalin was murdering
turmoil.
But
as late as April 1939, the Soviets offered the British and the French a defensive alliance, and they said no. And
that's
so
amazing.
the events, and then the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is literally, like a couple of weeks before the formal start of World War II. So they're really great interviews. I've learnt so much about
I would
sort of prehistory to World War II.
Well, we're going to have to go through that.
It's interesting because, Sikorsky, the Polish foreign minister or defense minister, was at the UN the other day, and he was saying, Stalin and Hitler started World War II. And
yeah, I saw him. I saw that speech. That was his 9/11 speech.
yeah,
Jeff, we are going to have to go through that because I'm a sucker for this stuff. And I appreciate you. And we ended up talking about Trump's UN speech just because that was the thing that was kind of on the market.
yeah, that's cool.
But
It was such a mad speech. It was good to talk about it.
yeah, that was mad is an understatement. Jeff Rich, Dr. Jeff Rich, he's a historian, author, retired government official from Melbourne, Australia, with a PhD in history and over 3 decades of experience in government. He created the Burning Archive on YouTube and on Substack, where he shares commentaries, book reviews, interviews on world history, culture, and politics. He has written 4 books, including 13 Ways of Looking at a Bureaucrat. We're going to have to talk about that next time. That name is just amazing to me. Jeff, you have a fantastic day, man. Thank you for this.
Cheers, Jamal.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.